Welcome back to the channel. My name is Philip. For those of you who are subscribers or regular viewers, I've got a special video in store for you guys, and if this is your first time watching one of the videos, welcome. So, why is this video special? Well, I was thinking, how can I make the most dense and valuable chess lesson video out there for you guys? And what I came up with is, why don't I cover the 10 chess rules of thumb that permanently made me a strong chess player? And these are rules of thumb where no calculation is required. They just apply to virtually every game. I won't say every game, but they apply to most games of chess that you'll play. And that's why they're so powerful. So let's get right into it. Just disclaimer, I should say, because this is a quick fire video, I'm not going to go into a whole bunch of calculations and variations. What I will do instead is ask you, just trust me, just apply these to your games and you will become a stronger player. You'll play better, you'll fall for less tactics, and just the game will unwind in your favor. So trust me on that. I got up to 2,100 in classical chess using these. So if they work for me, they probably work for people less than that rating as well. So let's get right into it. Very first one, rule of thumb number one. In the opening, the queen's best square is the c2 square. And likewise for black, and all these rules apply for colors reversed as well. Likewise for black, c7 is the best square. And if not c2 or c7, then put the queen on e2 or e7. You can't go wrong. Again, don't have to calculate a whole bunch of things. It just works. It just works. That's the beauty of these rules of thumb. So rule number one. Rule number two, in the endgame, always put your rooks behind the passed pawns. And this applies whether you are the attacking side with the passed pawn or if you are the defending side. When you're the attacking side, it works because you tie up your opponent's rook to be very passive. And for instance, in this game, this position, this is a technical win for white. White just has a more active rook. The king is going to come in and take this a6 pawn, and white's going to win the game. Whereas if the black rook managed to get behind the passed pawn, black has perpetual check ideas. The white king can go nowhere without this rook just getting it caught in a perpetual check net, if you want to call it. And this is why this position is a technical draw. This is 0.00 according to the engine. Okay, rule of thumb number three is always castle early. Again, I can show you 100 different games where castling too late resulted in the side losing, and this has happened to me before. So just trust me, just get your king to safety early. Castling is so important for that reason. It gets your king to safety, gets it out of the center, because before you know it, the position is going to open up in the middle game, and you do not want your king to be stuck in the center. And rule of thumb number four, while we're on this same position, is knight to f3 or knight to f6 are the best squares for the kingside knight. And don't, you can tell me, oh, but some openings involved knight to e2. Look, 9 times out of 10, 99 times out of 100, that knight belongs on f3. It's just so powerful. It has awesome influence on the center squares, and it can jump to g5 at any point. It's a very, very powerful square for the knight. You cannot go wrong, and knight to f6. So don't try to move it to e2 or h3 unless you know exactly what you're doing. Just play knight f3. Okay, rule of thumb number five. You can see they're quick fire, right? So another one like this, when you've castled queenside, king to b1 is always a good idea to play. And in this position, this is a Najdorf Sicilian. The engine literally gives king to b1 0.68 advantage for white, and the next best move is only 0.32, and that is to play h4. So before what it essentially does is, before you start your attack, just get your king to b1. And again, it's one of these computer-like moves, but it just works. Like, I don't know how to explain it other than it gets the king off this diagonal, and protects the a2 pawn from any tactics down the line. It's one of these moves that just prevents tactics against you down the line. You can't predict where the tactics will come from, but they will come. And that's why it's such an important move. So when you castle queenside, move your king to b1. And likewise, when you've castled kingside, which is going to be most of the time, if you have played f4 to launch an attack, you want to move your king to h1. And again, in this position, the engine says king to h1 is the best move. And as a human, again, unless you know that rule of thumb, you're probably going to play, you know, maybe h3 or h4 or g4 or I don't know, whatever other move you want to think up, knight b3, f5, etc. But the best move is king to h1. It gets the king off that diagonal. Again, it's just you don't know when the position is going to open, but when it does, the tactics work against you if your king is on g1. So just get it off that diagonal so that there's no checks or tactics. Okay, rule number 6. In the endgame, when there's very few pieces left on the board like this, or just when, you know, when pieces start getting traded, you're in the endgame. Most important thing is get your king into the game. And this means get it to the center first and foremost. And then, you know, let's say white gets the king to d3. Then you can decide, do I want the king on e4 to support something like f4, f5? Or do I move it this way and start putting pressure on this b6 pawn? And likewise, black doesn't know where the action is going to happen, but he knows that king needs to come out as soon as possible. The king is a very, very powerful piece in the endgame. So much so that if black got scared and just kept his king on h8, this king is just going to waltz into the position, win this b6 pawn with the rook, and then there's a passed c pawn, and white just wins the game. So both sides need to get their kings into the game as quickly as possible. All right, sticking on the theme of endgames, rule number 7. Learn basic king and pawn versus king endgames. These should be bread and butter for all chess players who are serious and want to improve. Someone should be able to wake you up with a bucket of ice water in the middle of the night at 4 a.m. and you should know the right move in this position for black. Black has 3 moves essentially, or 4 if you count d6, but that's crazy to move it away from you know, this pawn's just going to become a queen. 3 moves, 2 of them lose and 1 of them draw. Now, put in the comments if you know what the only drawing move for black is in this position. Again, you have to know this like the back of your hand. Likewise, here's another example. White to move. White has 4 legal moves. Only 1 of them win the game, and the other 3 draw. So you need to know these. You need to know these. That's the difference between a draw or a loss or a win. You know, like you just need to know them like the back of your hand. Rule number 8. Always look for pawn breaks in a position. So every chess game, or most chess games, get to a point where you've essentially improved the position of your pieces to a point where, you know, it's all incremental improvements to your position if you better the squares that your pieces are on. And this is where you have to start looking for pawn breaks, because pawn breaks give you weaknesses to attack. So in this case, white has a couple. White can play e4. That's a pawn break. So white should always have that in the back of their mind. How can I make that work? Is this going to be effective at some point? But in these types of positions, this is called a Carlsbad pawn structure with the pawns like this. b4 is the thematic break. And what you're trying to do is play b5 and trade these pawns on c6 and leave black with a weak pawn on c6, which you're going to target for the rest of the game. And also a weak square, oops, not there, weak square for the knight to jump in on c5. So what can black do in response? Because black probably needs to look for pawn breaks or some sort of activity on their own. Well, black's going to play queen to d6, attacking the pawn. And once white plays b5, black has this move, knight to g4, threatening to come in on h2. So g3 is played, and black is going to start looking for pawn breaks with that h-pawn coming up the board at the right time and trading on g3. So pawn breaks, look for them. Here's another example. White to play and white to improve their position through the use of pawn breaks. Again, this bishop's, it can't go on a much better square than that. This knight on f3, like we said, keep the knight on f3. It's very powerful. Bishop on d3, you could argue you can improve that one, but the queen and the rooks, they're relatively okay. This one's a bit passive. So where's the pawn breaks? Well, we've got a couple. h4, h5, probably not a good one because the knight covers that. c4, probably not a good one because it leaves you with an isolated d-pawn. How about a4? And this is the move. This is the best move for white in the position. You're essentially threatening to win a pawn like so. And so black needs to trade, and your rook, which was inactive on a1, is suddenly super active. Now you're applying a whole bunch of pressure from the file and from the diagonal onto this a6 pawn. And once the queen defends it, you bring the other rook in, and you get a really strong position as white. Slight advantage, but nonetheless, through the use of pawn breaks, you are improving your position. All right, where are we up to? Number 9. Do not leave pieces undefended. It just opens you up for tactics to lose the game. So in this position, white thinks, my knight on c3 is not really doing too much. I kind of want to reroute it to f3, where it can jump to e5 or possibly g5. So those are some ideas that white has, and so white decides to play knight to b5 and play knight to d4 next move, attacking the bishop, winning a tempo, and then knight to f3. But the problem is that knight on b5 is not defended by anything, and this just opens white up to tactics. So black wins by playing knight to g4. And now the threat is essentially if the queen moves away because it's under attack, queen to c5, check. Again, that king should have been on h1, right? You're just opening yourself up for tactics if you don't get that king off the diagonal. You're threatening check, king h1, and boom, you're a piece up. Now, just because I know some of you will be asking, what about if white played something else? What if white played something like queen to d4, stayed on that diagonal? Well, here we play c6. Again, the tactics just don't really work out for white. Now the queen is stuck, essentially. It has to go to a4. And here you just simply come in, queen to e3. Again, that king should have been on h1. Check. And black's going to win the game. There's just too much pressure on that e-file. And rule number 10, last but not least, again, one of these rules like king to b1 or king to h1 or knight f3, etc. This one is knight to e5 is usually a good move. The only thing you got to watch out for is watch your d-pawn, because your knight defends your d-pawn. So depending on the position, just watch, is it unstabilizing some part of your position, like that d4 pawn? Otherwise, it's one of these moves that you don't have to calculate too much, but it just seems to work. The engine loves it, and it always seems to be a good move because you're putting your knight on an outpost where it's going to be quite difficult to get rid of that knight. Like in this particular position, it's quite bad for black because f6 doesn't work because that g6 square is super weak now. And also black cannot kick the knight out with another knight or a dark squared bishop because black only has a light squared bishop in this case. But again, depending on the position, knight to e5 seems to work. 9 times out of 10, it just seems to be a good move. Again, don't ask me for a bunch of variations. It just works. You're improving the position of your knight. You're applying some pressure on your opponent's position. You're taking away key squares for black's pieces. And down the line, you're just going to continue improving your position. You're not winning this game by any stretch. It's still a pretty equal position, but you're going to double rooks in the c-file, maybe queen to b5, applying pressure on c7 with your rooks and b7 with your queen. d7 is off the cards with your knight, and it's just improving your position. Again, when you find yourself in a position like this, think, okay, rook to e1 is an option, knight to e5 is an option, queen to b5 is an option. All of these are good options, and knight to e5 punchline is always a good option. So those are the 10 rules of thumb. I have many more. If you guys want to see another video like this, let me know. Drop a note in the comments below. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I promise you, if you apply these principles to your games, these rules of thumb to your games, you will improve your chess play. Let me know how you go in the comments below. Until next time. Otherwise, click on the next video that you want to watch. I'm sure something's going to pop up. Anyway, I'll stop rambling. See you guys in the next video. Peace out.